Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today's project is going to be a 1970s, 1980s reel that I picked up for less than $5 at a local garage sale. I always like these little reels. They're very solid performers, and for a price you can't beat them. This is the Zebco Lancer. It's the 4010 edition, 4010 or whatever the nomenclature would be behind it. Looks like it's been sitting, used, but tired, probably on a shelf somewhere. The line I took off was old. And we're just going to go ahead and show you what this reel is made of, if you happen to have one, how to service it. And I'm looking forward to using this one on a lake. It's a nice size reel, probably a 20 or 30 size by today's standards. And it's durable. It's got a metal case, aluminum spool, and we'll show you how to service this one and how to take care of it. Speaking of taking care of it, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel who have taken care of us during this pandemic, whether you're a fire emergency, EMT, if you're in first aid or any of the healthcare professions, or if you're essential personnel, including our teachers and transit workers and all of the people in the supply chain. Thank you for everything you're doing, putting your lives on the line every day, trying to keep us safe. Really appreciate that. So I start by removing the external pieces. That handle is held in by a screw. This one was obvious. There are no caps on that side, so it's easy to see that it's a screw. There is a lock washer on that screw as well, so make sure that you find that one so it doesn't fall on your bench somewhere. And I like to put it right back onto the shaft of that screw so that I don't lose it. And then I put it into a parts tray, just the bottom of a jug, to keep those parts in one place for reassembly. Let's take the spool off. There's a looks like a sealed system here with the drag washers, so there's probably just one drag washer in there, and I suspect it's a plastic one and no service is needed. It looks like this is peened over it, so you won't be able to take that off. We'll take the drag adjuster knob, we'll put that in there as well. And there's a little click ratchet and a spool height adjuster. I'm going to take those off too. And we'll go into there as well. This is a good point to tell you to take pictures along the way if you're servicing a reel that you're not familiar with. If that's the case, then if you get stuck somewhere, you can always go back and look at your picture and see the orientation of the pieces and parts. And that's just not something empty that I say on a lot of these. I just was working on one yesterday. It was an older rear drag reel, and I just wasn't familiar with how a particular piece was laying on the bottom, and I went right back to the pictures, and sure enough, it showed me what to do. Now, of course, my pictures tend to be videos, but you don't need to do a video. You can use a still camera, use your cell phone, use whatever to take those pictures as reminders of where you are in the process. And as much as we like to think we can work through these start to finish, things happen, right? You get a phone call, you get distracted, got to run out and do something you forgot to do, whatever it is, and then you come back and you can't quite remember where you were or what you were doing. Happens all the time. All right, there's 3 case screws. These are stainless. This is a nice reel. You know, Zebco was founded all the way back post-war, around in the 1940s. Its claim to fame was that it developed that closed face reel that we're all familiar with. And then Zebco in the late 1950s acquired Langley, which was making spin fishing reels. And Langley was an aircraft manufacturer during World War II, came back and started making spin fishing reels. And when Zebco acquired Langley, they started to introduce the spinning reels. So this one is well after that. This one's in the 70s. It was made in Japan. That's a nice example of a reel that will last a long time. There's nothing fancy about the technology inside of here. This is the anti-reverse dog. This is a good place to take a picture if you plan on taking this apart, or if you've taken this apart and wondered how it works. It's got a hook spring here. It wraps around the screw, and it anchors itself in the base of the let's see if we can get a better picture of this on camera. So it has a little hook that's going around the neck of this on the back side, wraps around the screw, and then it anchors right in that little V of the case here. So hopefully that's good indication there of how that works if you get stuck. Also notice this little indentation here, this little cavity. This little cavity is where the point from that crosswind block is going to ride. So if you get it outside that case, it won't perform properly. Okay, over to this reel. It's a pretty simple design reel. It's very typical of the reels of the 70s. We have a pin that's holding that crosswind arm in. I'm going to pull that pin with the little pliers. And that's always a good place to stop and understand orientations and the like. This one's got a U on the back of it. We'll show you just a moment. You'll also notice on this one that you have a little spacer washer here that's kind of holding that arm in. Don't lose that washer. And with that pin removed, we can remove the top, the axle shaft. We'll put that into the tray as well. Once the axle shaft is out, you can take off that crosswind arm. That little washer just stayed right on there, and that's fine. I'm going to take that off, put that into my tray. This is the main gear then. So the main gear's got two things going on. The ratchets on the outside here is the anti-reverse, and the teeth on the back are the drive for this reel. Now there's nothing fancy in this reel. This reel does not have ball bearings, doesn't have bushings that I can tell. Looks like the bushings is just simply the case. And it has a U-clip here. That U-clip holds the upper assembly in. You just want to work that off. Be careful, it will fly if you put too much pressure on it, but this is the U-clip I was referring to. And that holds the rotor in. You'll see when we pull this whole assembly out now that there's a little clip in here, right here on this groove. That's where that U-clip is riding. Okay, well this is dirty. There's nothing other than dirt on here. The only maintenance you need to do right now is just a little bit of a squirt of oil on the bail assembly. This is a dead end on this side, but just squirt some penetrating oil on there. Make sure that you get a clip going there. Notice that you have a little tag that comes up and down here. Might be a little bit hard to see, but there's a tag right there that goes up and down. And there's a corresponding ramp here. So what happens is as that rotor comes around, rides up the ramp, it's pushing that tag up. And when you push that tag up, like this, the bail fires. Okay? Got a lot of dirt on there. I'm going to just take a scrubby pad and a little bit of rod and reel cleaner. This is Penn's rod and reel cleaner. Just see if we can't get some of that grime off of there. I also like to use a product called Purple Power. They do that does a good job too. But you can see most of the stuff will just clean right off of that. And again, for a couple of dollars at a garage sale, this reel is going to get a second chance. It's going to go fishing again. Now, if you find that you got something that's a little bit tough, you can always move over to steel wool, or you can just kind of leave it and say, you know what, that's the patina of the day. This reel's been through a lot. Let it show off its history, and you can do it that way as well. This is pretty stubborn stuff, so I don't know exactly what we have on here. It's not all grease, but it is certainly something a little bit more than what's generally just found because it's been laying on a closet for a while. That's cleaning up okay. Alright, well, for the sake of you not watching me do the dirty dishes for the rest of this video, we're just going to leave it there. I'm going to grab a paper towel and just kind of mop off what we did do. Maybe I'll come back a little later and give it a second coat or something. Okay, so the case is dead clean inside. There's no grease or grime or junk or anything in there, which kind of tells you that if there was a performance issue, it was probably suffering from lack of lubrication. And we'll just go ahead and we'll make sure all parts are clean. A little bit of that dried grease on here. Let's get that crosswind block off. And there's just a little bit of dried grease on the back. Now while you're doing this, make sure you check the teeth on the main gear. These don't normally wear out, these small reels that have just been sitting around. They generally just die a quiet time. Just grease up, dry up, and kind of get forgotten about. All right, I'm just going to give it a healthy dose of grease because it hasn't had grease in a long time. All those teeth checked out fine. I'll put a little bit onto the back side of this gear here where it's going to go in the case. I'm going to take that here and lay it down for a moment. We'll come over to the pinion gear. We're going to check the same thing. Now, if this was loaded with grease, dried grease, dirt, whatever, use a brush. And I'm just doing this as an example to show you because there's nothing in there. But if you are going to scrape that off, put a paper towel or something behind it. That way it will capture the grease and won't leave it on your bench for the next project to kind of get stuck with. All right, nice amount of new grease there. A little bit on the shaft up top here. This is going to ride in the collar of the reel. And then since this is clean, we're just going to go ahead and reinstall this by inserting it in. Then we're going to go get the U-clip from our parts tray. We're going to slide it down in that channel. And that's going to lock it in so it doesn't go anywhere. From time to time, people ask me, they say, I've got a rocking rotor. Well, in this case, you can't do anything. There's no adjustment up top. That's just a condition that you're going to have to learn to live with if it's severely worn. In this case, it's not terrible. I'm going to get grease into that little slide where the back end of that pin is going to ride. And a little bit of grease on the rest. We'll take the main gear then. We're going to put the main gear in. You don't oil or grease the slots where the click lever is going to ride. It has no value there. You want to get some grease around the eccentric loop here and on the stud on the back side. We'll take our main shaft then. The whole side is down. If you found that there was grease in there, you can use some steel wool or you can use a flexible scrubby or something, and then just a light coat of grease onto the shaft to let it slide easily through that assembly. We want to bring that down now, and you want to align the hole in that shaft with the slot for the pin to ride. You're going to take your crosswind block up. If you were wondering about the orientation, it's hard to mess this one up because it's a U shape and there's only one way to load that clip in, but sometimes it's pretty easy to do. All right, grab the pin, bring it through the U clip, and then find your hole in the axle. Like that, and then you have to find the hole on the other side of the U-clip. There we go, and then you need to seat it into the carrier there. So there's a lot going on here. There's a pin that goes through the axle, through the second hole, and lines up into this shaft here. And then it sits flush on that gear, and then you want to grab that little washer that we were talking about to get that back on. On the side plate, you can put a drop of oil onto this anti-reverse dog. And now when you do that, be aware that there is this little horseshoe clip here. It's a spring, and if you're not careful, that spring can shoot. You want to just grab the side case here for 2 pieces of greasing. One goes into that little cavity where the other side of that pin is going to ride. And just a little bit more grease into that little faux bearing, if you will. Okay. Simply, you're going to have to move that anti-reverse dog a little bit, so it always kind of comes in on an angle here as you go to reinstall. And then if you just flop your switch, you'll hear a nice click in the case, which means that it's mounted properly. And then we can go ahead, take those 3 screws and close up the bottom. So if you like this kind of video, I'm going to ask you to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button. That'll help you see all the videos that I post. It's a wide and eclectic group of reels that I work on. I work on saltwater, freshwater, all types, spinning, conventional, level winds, lever drags, bait feeders, all kinds, bait casters. And if you're interested in the hobby of reel repair, or if you just happen to have a reel that you own that you want to get working it optimally, then so if you subscribe, hit the notifications, you'll see what I'm working on, and you can choose whether that's one of those that you want to view or not. And also from the help desk, if you will, if you have a question, if you leave me that question in the comments, I'll try and answer it for you. And if you have a reel that needs to be worked on, well, I do that too. So if you send me an email to the email address on the note that business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with that reel repair information. So we're putting the handle back on now. We put that screw through the side plate hole. Just tightening that up. So Zebco is an interesting one. Zebco bought Langley and started making spin fishing reels. And then Zebco got acquired along the way a couple of times, and most recently it's a division of this W.C. Brady company, and I think they're part of Newell Enterprises, if I remember correctly, Newell Rubbermaid. But they also have Coleman, and they have Hummingbird, and some of the other things. And from a brand standpoint, they have Rhino, and they, until recently, they had Finor and Van Staal in that group, but those were sold to Pure Fishing, which is the Penn fishing reel conglomerate. So there you go. All right, here's your drag adjuster button on. Well, whatever that drag is in there, it's certainly functional. It's holding it down the way it should. Let's give it a test then. There you go. That's a nice smooth little reel. Make sure that the bail is operating. Make sure that the anti-reverse override is good. Tighten up the other side, and that's it. So that's your Zebco Lancer 4010 or 4010 or whatever, 4010, whatever it might be. It's a nice little reel, mid-70s, made in Japan. Ready to go fishing again. We'll just, after the video's over, we'll try a little bit of a different cleaner here, see if we can't get some more of that grease and junk off of there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing you a great day.